Welcome back to Sunday Vibes, one and all. Unfortunately, we're not in the pub this weekend because of the bank holiday, but I'm glad to say I'm joined by Christopher Hamill and Doogie Critchley. Hamster, how are you?
Yeah, I'm absolutely fantastic, mate. I am feeling fit as a fiddle. I'm ready to go. Feeling bright this morning. So hopefully
I like it. Finally got over the cold.
You what? Sorry, I'm over it. I've stepped out of it. The phlegm has left the building.
I love it. Douglas, how are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. I'm enjoying the sort of post-season wind down at the moment. Feeling pretty relaxed. The transfers are starting to kick into gear. Sunderland are back in the Championship. It's good times.
Absolutely, and you mentioned transfers there. That's exactly what we're going to be discussing on this show and probably throughout the majority of the summer because there's no international tournament. I'm not counting the Nations League in there. We asked you guys on Twitter, or Christopher did, I should be precise there, to predict your club's biggest transfer mistake this summer. We're going to go through some of the responses and review whether we agree with them, whether we disagree, whether or not basically it is going to be a whiffer. The first one was sent in by Bangla_boy. He says, buying Darwin Nunez. Just flat out. Now, I'm not too sure. Oh, we've got written down he's a Manchester United fan. So he's a Man United fan. He says a mistake would be buying Darwin Nunez. Hamster, do you agree?
Well, we've said, haven't we, on numerous other shows before that we think his price tag is slightly inflated. Of course, there's been fees banded about of £80 million now that Manchester United, now that Arsenal, now that other big hitters are interested. Now, I do like the player. He has a very unique skill set. He's got a pretty solid pedigree. He's had 2 good seasons in the Premier League. But I am sticking to my guns. I wouldn't be paying over 50, 60 million pounds. I do think there's value to be had elsewhere in the market at that price point. But, let's just give the guys at home a little bit of context, and gals. Of course, Benfica turned down a €50 million bid from West Ham in January. So they are going to stick to their guns when it comes to this valuation, it would seem. And I didn't actually realise that how much they paid for him from Almeria when he was in the Segunda Division, or after a great season in the Segunda Division. It was actually a Liga NOS, a Portuguese transfer record of 21.6 million. So I didn't realise the original outlay on him. So now I guess that makes it less surprising, the fact that they want such a big fee for him. And you've got
Almeria have a 25% sell-on clause.
That's a great bit of colour.
That also affects it.
I love that. Love that. Well worth the interjection. Yeah, but when you've got people like Rui Costa, legends of the game, saying he'll be one of the great strikers in the next decade, you do kind of have to sit up and take notice, right? Here's a rundown of some of the basics if you don't know. If you've been living under a rock, 22, 6'2", right-footed, predominantly plays as a centre forward in Benfica's 4-2-3-1, 30 goals and assists in just 28 league starts this season. That's followed up a very promising debut campaign where he sort of played as a second striker to Haris Seferovic, when he got 14 goals and assists in 19 starts. And I imagine what sort of put him on people's radar this season was his performances in the Champions League, right? 6 goals, 10 appearances, scored against the likes of Barcelona, Bayern Munich, Liverpool, Ajax. And he's that unique blend of size, like pace, raw aggression, and great ball progression as well. He kind of reminds me a little bit of Romelu Lukaku in a way, who's of course not enjoyed a very good season. So maybe it's not a very timely comparison. But yeah, whoever gets him, I think is in for a real treat. It's just whether they want to make him their one and only signing this summer. And anyone that spends 80 to 90 million pounds on one player is not signing many others, are they? Well, unless it's like PSG or Man City, but yeah.
I think it's going to be an interesting one for Darwin Nunez because over the last week, Jorge Mendes has taken charge of the transfer dealings around him. Originally, he was with a different agency. Jorge Mendes has now stepped in to get involved, which I think is going to have heavy sway on where he ends up and whether or not he gets this move this summer. Doogie, I want to reference particularly Manchester United fan here because Bangla Boy is a Manchester United fan. So do we think Darwin Nunez, after all that Hamster said there, all that great context, is he a good fit for United?
Not particularly, I wouldn't say. Man United's a tricky one this summer because obviously, there's question marks. It looks like Martial's going to leave. Rashford's future's a little bit unclear, but I'd be surprised if Ten Hag, with those forward departures of Lingard, Martial, we don't know the situation around Greenwood, would also sanction the departure of Rashford. He's made clear that Cristiano Ronaldo that he wants him in his plans. He says that Ronaldo brings goals, etc. in his press conference last week, where, his lack of sort of English, limited him from saying too much of his tactical plans. And he also keeps his cards quite close to his chest. So no one really knows which direction Ten Hag is going to take that forward line. But I'm kind of with Hamill. I don't agree with the price being linked with Darwin Nunez. When I've watched him play, which admittedly is not that much outside the Champions League, which he did do exceptionally well in a really difficult group where they had Bayern Munich, they had Barcelona, and then their knockout stretches, playing 2 games against Ajax, Liverpool, getting 6 goals in those sort of games is really pretty impressive. But when I watch Darwin Nunez, I don't see a player, unlike Rui Costa, who's going to be amongst the Haalands or Mbappes in 4 or 5 years' time, personally. I think he's quite a clunky player sometimes, and you can't really fault his goal record, but it doesn't look like it comes as easily to him as those sort of top players. That's not meaning to say that he won't be a success wherever he moves to, but I'd be reluctant to go over sort of £50 million as well, to be honest. I think prior to this season, he'd only started 19 league games in a top league, and Portugal's not even a top 5 league. So there is some scepticism about his ability, but he does score all sorts of goals. He's very good in the air as well. He makes excellent back post runs. He's always very alive in the box, and can take on a man and beat a man as well. So he does have a lot about him, but I'm kind of with Hamill. I don't know whether he's ready for a club of Man United stature, and I definitely wouldn't be paying, the price of €100 million was being banded about earlier this week in the papers.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting one for Manchester United, because Man United definitely need a striker this summer. Absolutely cannot go into next season with only Cristiano Ronaldo as a number 9, aged 38 throughout the season. It would just be absolutely unacceptable. So Darwin Nunez is clearly one of the better options on the market. I tend to agree with you guys, though. For that fee, I think Manchester United have got a lot of work to do this summer, and to spice maybe 2/3 or half of their budget on Darwin Nunez, I think would be a bit of a surprise to me. It really would be a bit of a surprise. I'm not too sure what other destinations, though. Brilliant. All right, parcel's been received. As I was saying there, basically, I'm quite intrigued as to where destination-wise Darwin Nunez can end up, because I think a lot of the top clubs are quite stacked in terms of strikers this coming summer. If Lewandowski was to leave Bayern, I do wonder whether they would have a little nibble at a player like Darwin Nunez. But other than, Bayern Munich, I think he might be a little bit stuck if the fee is as high as it's been originally reported.
Yeah, I think the fee probably points towards a scarcity of real top-level strikers or strikers with the potential to be top-level at current outside of some of the names we've already mentioned, Haaland, Mbappe, etc. I actually think it's a bit of a shame that the bid from West Ham was turned down. Of course, that is Benfica's prerogative, and he clearly is worth more than 50, so it's a good business decision. But for him professionally, I feel like that would be a good stepping stone for him. And you know what? Like, watching him very sparingly, admittedly, his strengths don't really seem to be in build-up, although he is very good at dropping in, picking it up and running with the ball, and his sort of raw pace, aggression, and whatnot sees him just shoulder people off. Like, physically, I think he is built for the Premier League. But he's not got that sort of high level of technical ability, that intricateness around the box that would sound out, a move to City, Liverpool, Chelsea, like some of the teams that are being mentioned now. I do think he would need, a lot of coaching, and maybe he's become more desirable because of the sort of impact that Luis Diaz has had, arriving from the Portuguese league straight away, or the impact that Ruben Diaz had. Clearly, people aren't as sceptical about the Liga NOS as they maybe once were, or the Primera Liga. But yeah, I do think his next club should be a Dortmund or a team competing maybe for Europa League football in the Premier League, and that's no slight at him or at Benfica.
That's United then.
Yeah.
United.
There we go. It brings us back to United. Football. Let's just leave him in the red side of Manchester. But do you know what I'm saying? Yeah. I don't think... Is he the player that Manchester United need right now? Do they need a finished article to propel them back into the top 4? Do you think, Joe, or can they afford? Or is Ten Hag actually the guy to develop someone like this because of his track record? It is interesting, thinking about matching him up with the various managerial talent. Ten Hag is someone that could probably fast track his progression. What do you think?
Yeah, quite possibly. Like I said earlier, there definitely needs to be a striking addition, and whoever comes in needs to be willing to at least play understudy or learn from, maybe play off Cristiano Ronaldo to an element, do a lot of his defensive work. which I think, might suit a player like Darwin Nunez more so than another option Manchester United going for in the market that's a bigger name, for instance. I think Darwin Nunez, his ability to also come in off that left-hand side at times, like you said, we've seen him play as a second sort of striker off of Seferovic last season. I think that sort of adaptability might suit Ten Hag, and he might lean towards a player that's going to be a real dog off the ball and add some physicality, which Manchester United have missed for an awful long time. So it wouldn't surprise me to see Manchester United go for him, and I would be perfectly happy to see that happen. I just do worry about that fee. It comes back to that fee, doesn't it? If United can get him for the right price, then I think it's a lovely fit. If not, then I think United need to be spending their money elsewhere.
It's a brave club that spends €80 million or 90 million euros on an understudy when their main number 9 is the best paid player in the Premier League, right? It's just a financial black hole, I guess. But I think just to sound out like whoever doesn't sign Darwin Nunez, I think Scamacca might be an interesting alternative at Sassuolo. That's for someone like West Ham, but that's just a little side thought I had. Should we move on to the next one?
Yeah, absolutely. The next one came in from Messi_scores, who's clearly a Barcelona fan, because he says, sacrificing Frankie de Jong for a 34-year-old Robert Lewandowski when we already have too many attackers. Doogie, you're a resident European football expert here. I mean, take it away.
Yeah, I mean, what a week, really, with the whole Lewandowski scenario. But starting with Frankie de Jong, he's made perfectly clear that he doesn't want to leave Barcelona. Xavi doesn't want him to leave Barcelona, but he still might leave Barcelona because their finances might require that they sell a top asset. And Frankie de Jong, you could collect, close to his £70 million fee that they paid for him back in 2019 from Ajax. But he's been pretty good for Barcelona without really finding a consistent role in the side. Last year under Ronald Koeman, it was much more box to box, and we saw him picking up some crucial goals. But this year, with the emergence of Gavi and Nico, and he's really not that number 6 player that Barcelona thought they were going to buy. His sort of defensive awareness and positioning can sometimes be a bit astray. So he doesn't really seem like that out-and-out Busquets replacement. And they're bringing in Kessie, of course. They're bringing in Christensen, and they want to register these players, and they want to go for Lewandowski, which might require them to sell, a top asset, as I keep on saying. They're also linked with Rafinha as well. They want to strengthen at wing. We're not quite sure what's happening with the Dama Traore. So the situation's a little bit unclear at Barcelona. On ERU a few weeks ago, I thought Lewandowski would be an excellent signing for Barcelona. You can't really fault his record. I think it's over 40 goals in all competitions for 7 years. I think he got over 50 this year. He is the best goal scorer probably of his generation, at least that's still going today. But at the same time, if you're signing him, Alonso, Azpilicueta, Kessie, who's not exactly too young, and then you've still got Busquets, Piqué, Alba playing a major role in your side, are Barcelona really learning from the errors of the past where they're handing these massive contracts to players that are well into their 30s as they're supposed to be evolving into a more sort of economically viable and responsible era? Like, I don't really think so. So some of Barcelona's business really does trouble me. I also don't know whether Christensen's necessarily going to be the long-term PK replacement that they've been looking for so long. Eric Garcia proved that he's probably not up to the task as well. So alongside Ronald Araujo, they're also looking at a more physical defender apparently, and that's Koulibaly or Jules Koundé they've been linked with. But these players are going to cost an enormous amount of money as well. So Barcelona, I think there's a lot of talk from Joan Laporta at the moment about what they're going to be able to do in this window. I'm a little bit sceptical about most things that come out of his mouth at the moment. But if they could sign Lewandowski, I think that's an exciting signing. I'm just worried about the rest of their business that's going on around it.
Do they need him though? What was the point of signing Aubameyang if you've got Lewandowski? If you're bringing Lewandowski in,
I suppose Aubameyang was a bit of a a stopgap basically. They didn't really have an out-and-out number 9 at that time. I think Memphis Depay has proved that he works best either off the left or as a number 10. He likes the ball to feet rather than running on beyond defenders. And Aubameyang did really, really well for Barcelona, but he's not at Lewandowski's level. And Lewandowski would probably elevate their attack quite considerably because they did score quite a few fewer goals than Real Madrid this year. And prior to a little dip at the end of the season, their points per game under Xavi was really pretty comparable to Real Madrid up until, as I say, right at the very end. So I think he would make a massive difference. And with Ansu Fati coming back on the left, they're looking to extend Ousmane Dembele on the right. Again, that looks like it might not happen as well. There's talks about Chelsea, Liverpool, PSG going in for Ousmane Dembele. So it's just another summer of massive, massive change at Barcelona. But I do think Lewandowski would be an improvement on Aubameyang and any other forward options.
So would you sacrifice Frankie for him? Because they're going to have to. There's no way they can bring in Robert Lewandowski for however much it's going to cost to get him out of Bayern on those huge wages when they've given a 3-year contract to Aubameyang. Depay's still there. Like, they've got Kessie, like you say, Christensen, Aspi, Marcus
If it meant
Alonso.
that they could... Yeah, I mean, if it meant that they signed Lewandowski, were able to register Kessie, Christensen, brought in Azpilicueta if they're so insistent about it, and signed a better left-back than Marcus Alonso, like a Grimaldo or someone like that, or a Rafael Guerreiro who's got 1 year left on his contract, then I'd be all for it. I just don't like the targets they're currently linked with at the moment, to be honest. So I wouldn't sacrifice Frankie de Jong if it was Lewandowski, Marcus Alonso, Azpilicueta, but if it was, a combination of other players and Lewandowski, then I'd be all for it.
Oof. Christopher, what do you make of this whole situation?
I mean, I have no problem with them sacrificing Frankie de Jong to fix holes in the side. But like you've just said, they have Aubameyang. I think he was going at a fairly decent rate in league play. And short of like some sort of drop off in his physicality that we're not aware of or privy to, I don't think that they're... I hear what Doogie's saying. He is an upgrade on Aubameyang, but the difference between 25 and 35 league goals, if that is what your title hopes hinge on, then that doesn't sound out like an awful lot of confidence for the rest of the squad. Like if their whole patter was, we're going to sell De Jong, but we're going to bring in 3 to 4 sensible transfers, we're going to reduce the average age of the squad, we're going to try and replicate what AC Milan have done in the last 3 to 4 years after a couple of really blunder-filled windows, I would be all for it, and I'd be pleasantly surprised as well. But yes, pursuing transfers that aren't costing anything fee-wise, but an absolute bomb in wages, it just feels very short to medium term. It feels like they're wrestling with their ego. They want to sort out the finances, but also, still bring in big names to curry favour with the fans. To kind of peddle the Barcelona back image around the globe. Like this feels to me like a status signing rather than anything else. Does Lewandowski win them the Champions League by himself, given the complexion of their squad right now? No, they're not a Lewandowski away from winning like Europe's top prizes again, are they? Like we saw that after they got slapped by an 11th place German side in the Europa League. So if he was just the jewel in the crown, if he was just finishing off this team, then I'll have a little bit more sympathy with it. But he's not. And they could probably still win the title without him. As Patrick Van Straten has pointed out, maybe Real Madrid, probably in less diplomatic terms than this, Real Madrid, not an insurmountable proposition right now in La Liga, are they? Like, I think they are not necessarily there for the taking, but Xavi can certainly have a good go at it. So yeah, I don't really get it. I wanted to ask you because, I saw you tweet out last week or earlier on this week that you found his approach quite disrespectful or borderline disrespectful to Bayern Munich.
I do, to be honest with you. I do. I think it's now becoming a bit of a public farce. I can't believe how public Lewandowski has made this. Now, he's obviously made it so public because behind the scenes he's tried to do it privately and Bayern are just having none of it and they're saying, look, you got a year left on your deal. But to be pushing this hard and to be so publicly saying, look, I want out of Bayern, they're not the club for me, and blah, blah, blah. I think, personally, you want to have a better club lined up than Barcelona. Like, I know Barcelona historically are absolutely the elite of the elite, but right now, jumping ship from Bayern to Barca and, throwing your toys out the pram to a level and, kicking up a bit of a stink to do it, and I'm sure annoying Bayern fans in the process where you are a legend of the club, is it worth it to go to Barca? Like, if you really want it that bad, could you not just wait one more year, win an 11th league title, maybe push again for the Champions League and leave for a free without damaging your legacy amongst the fans? Because if I was a Bayern Munich fan and I saw Lewandowski in the press constantly going, I want out, it's not good enough from Bayern, they need to sell me, they need to do this, I would start to get a bit pissed off of him.
I think there seems to be in the last couple of years, do you remember when he kind of made, there was rumblings of him wanting to move before, wasn't there? And there was he also kind of threw his toys out the pram, if memory serves me correctly, when he didn't win the top goal scorer award. I remember covering that on Eurofootball Daily maybe a couple of years ago. But I think he is hell-bent on securing an individual award at this point, isn't he? And he maybe sees a banging season with Barcelona as a greater means to achieve that than another glory-filled season with Bayern Munich. Like, I suppose he's 34 now. I can sympathise with that to an extent because he should have won the Ballon d'Or 2 years ago. But yeah, I feel like he's got a bit of a saviour complex. He wants to be the one, doesn't he, to go and restore Barcelona. And I'm not sure that's possible. I think that's maybe delusions of grandeur.
Well, it works for us. It works for us, honestly. Like, Barca take Lewandowski, get Rafinha through the door, all these old age pensioners, and then like force Frankie out. Because I don't think Frankie wants to leave. He's obviously a boyhood Barcelona fan as well, isn't he? So, good luck to him if he wants to stay. But it might be taken out of his hands. If they're this gagging for Lewandowski and the rest of these players, they might just have to say to him, look, you're gone. And I'm not too sure how many destinations will be on the table for Frankie de Jong on the wages he's currently on and the fee it's going to take to get him. Should we move on to the next one then? From Luis, who is a Liverpool fan, and he says, not replacing Mane with a world-class striker. Of course, Sadio Mane seems like he's leaving the club. We saw Fabrizio tweet earlier in the week saying that he is going to inform the club. I don't think he's done it just yet, and it looks like Bayern could be a potential destination for him. Weirdly enough, I saw that the fee today, I think it was in the Times or the Athletic, is about £42.5 million that Liverpool want. Bayern are willing to pay more like 30, so there's going to have to be some sort of meet in the middle there. But what do we think about this one? Not replacing Mane with a world-class striker, because I'm not too sure Liverpool will go out there and spend a huge chunk of money. It's not very Liverpool, to go out and sign a Darwin Nunez. I don't see that happening.
Dude, what I found interesting about this was him saying with a world-class striker, not necessarily just like an elite winger. What do you make of that?
Yeah, I mean, I think they might be forced to go to the market, not because of Mane just leaving on his own, but the fact that Origi's leaving. There's speculation that they'll accept offers if the right offer comes in for Minamino, for Oxlade-Chamberlain, of course. I mean, they've got Fabio Carvalho arriving, but you don't want him playing any more than, 10 Premier League games in total probably next year. And I mean, unless he completely hits the ground running. So I think they do need some forward resources. And we've talked extensively about Nkunku as a Mane replacement. I'm totally on board with that. But I do think, and I've sort of banged this drum for a little while now, that a more physical number 9 as an option, a la Origi over the last few years, would be pretty wise for Liverpool. I sometimes think that sometimes against those deep blocks we've seen in patches during games this year that Liverpool, when it's not really working through their primary, ways of attack, that right-hand link up between Salah, Henderson and Trent, or Mane's not really getting the rub of the green, Diaz is struggling to beat his man, or so. I mean, that doesn't happen very regularly, to be totally honest. But even so, they do need a different strategy, a sort of plan B. So I think a more physical number 9 would be a good option for them to bring off the bench. I know it's not the most attractive option, and probably is not going to get Liverpool fans that excited right now, signing a physical number 9 to bring off the bench. But I do think it is a well worth considering. Someone in the mould of, they're not going to be able to get him because they've extended his contract until 2027, I believe. But someone like a Patrick Schick, who I think is a wonderful finisher in the box, and has just had a sensational last 12 months with Bayer Leverkusen and the Czech Republic before that. Joint top scorer, Euro 2020. Had a difficult few years with Roma, and RB Leipzig was a quite encouraging loan. But Patrick Schick now operating at a really, really high level. I think it was 22 Bundesliga goals last year. Someone like Patrick Schick, I'm not going to say that they're going to be able to get him, or a Victor Osimhen type player as well, a really physical number 9 that stretches defences and can offer more of an aerial threat, despite the fact that Diogo Jota is actually surprisingly good at heading the ball. I think he was the joint most for headers last year with 4. But I just think another option in there to bring off the bench to affect games in the final 20 minutes, like Origi has so famously over the last 3 or 4 years, scoring countless important goals, not least against Barcelona and Liverpool in the 2019 Champions League run as well. And he got that send-off, which I thought was quite hilarious at the end of the season. But, Liverpool fans really went for me on that. I just...
Pay your respects, mate.
I just thought it was a little bit over the top. I haven't seen Liverpool do that for too many players that have started 13 league games in the last 5 years. But this isn't really about Origi. I think Origi's
up there with Adam
done his job.
Lafondra as one of the best super subs to grace the Premier League, mate. Have some respect.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, this isn't really about Origi. I think they could do with a more physical number 9. So yeah, I go for Nkunku and potentially an up-and-coming number 9. Someone like a Hugo Ekitike. Not necessarily him, though. I don't think he's quite ready. But someone in that mould.
All right, I'm going to disagree with Dukes. I actually think that a physical number 9 doesn't suit this Liverpool system of physicality. that much. I think that the ability for the front three to swap and be dynamic and move across the front line is pretty much extremely key to how Jurgen Klopp wants to play football. So I think a good sign-in for Bayern. I think if they're going to sell Sadio Mane to Bayern, I would be looking at a swap deal that involves Serge Gnabry. I think Serge Gnabry also has a year left on his contract, is younger than Sadio Mane. I think he's 26 now. It offers also extreme physicality, a really good presser of the ball, highly intense in a Bayern Munich system. Great going forward. His sort of underlying numbers, expected goals and expected assists are still amongst Europe's elite. And could you swap or work out some sort of fee deal where Serge Gnabry goes to Liverpool and Mane goes to Bayern Munich? Maybe there has to be some money involved as well. But I think a player like that can operate on the right and the left. Mo Salah can play through the middle. Jota can play through the middle. Firmino's still at the club. Luis Diaz can play on both sides. I think the versatility of that front line, it would be very, very scary. I'm just not too sure. I'm not too sure they need a number 9. You don't mind the fact
that he plays his best football off the right?
Not at all. Not at all. I think Mo Salah could play exactly as we saw Sadio Mane play through the middle at times this season. I think Mo Salah could comfortably play through the middle, and I still think that Diogo Jota, although he had a slightly poor, second half of the season, his first half of the season was just monstrous when he was playing through the middle. So I don't think there's any problem with not signing a designated number 9 to replace Sadio Mane, who himself wasn't technically a designated number 9 in the first place. I think that one of the finest elements of Liverpool's games is the interchangeable front three, and I wouldn't necessarily be looking to lock one position off by signing a player that can only play through the middle and wants to play in the penalty box. Use high-end stuff.
I personally keep, Salah's been one of the best players in the world, probably the third best after Benzema and Mbappe this year. I wouldn't be changing Salah's position, off the right-hand side. Serge Gnabry plays his best football off the right. I don't know. Hamill, which side do you sort of fall down on?
I'm trying to think of something to say that would add some value that you've not already mentioned, Yuppie. You covered it quite well there. I was actually thinking, I know that Liverpool have been linked with Ousmane Dembele an awful lot, but I was actually thinking people are perhaps sleeping somewhat on Moussa Dembele's exploits at Lyon. Here is a 25-year-old that in 2 out of his last 3 full campaigns in the south of France has operated at 0.8 goals and assists per 90. He's a very good age. I think he's quite gettable. And he is mobile. He's physical. He's super efficient in the box. I think he is an interesting proposition for any top Premier League side that are looking for, value at number 9 perhaps. He's played
21 goals in 25 starts he's got this season. Yeah, he's with United.
He's played in a wide area before. And of course, he had that sort of down season at Atletico Madrid where he collapsed in training, and that has maybe raised a few question marks or put some people off pursuing him in the last 12 months. But I think he could be an interesting option for them that maybe ticks a couple boxes that you've both mentioned. We ran up and Nkunku, Bowen, sort of Nunez on winners and losers, didn't we, Joe? So I won't go over them. People have gone a little bit cold on Jonathan David again. Of course, he's leaving Lille at the end of the season. Yeah. I think he could be an interesting development player. A player would probably take 1,500 minutes in their maiden campaign at Liverpool and be quite chipper about it and move on. But yeah, he plays down the middle. There's interesting options for them. I think I'd be pursuing a striker, yeah.
Okay, fair enough. I mean, they'll end up going for Nkunku, won't they? Who is just I think he has a £62 million release clause as well on Nkunku, doesn't he? So
yeah, I know, but that's literally been our answer the last 5 times we've discussed this, hasn't it? So I was just trying to think outside the box there.
Truth.
DRB at
Val the Sea Pigeon. Val the Sea Pigeon is a Brighton fan, and they say not buying a striker. Not buying a striker now. Obviously, still struggling for goals. I think Trossard was top goal scorer on 8 this season, wasn't he? Neil Maupay and Danny Welbeck as well up there. In fact, Neil Maupay might have had 8 too. What do we think about this Brighton striking situation? Because we've been crying out for a poacher for a number of years now, and they've not been able to find one, have they? They've not been able to find one. Where can they turn? Because they are working on a budget. They still haven't really invested that Ben White money, so maybe there's options there, but Who would you guys be looking at here? Would you be looking at maybe somebody who went down from the Premier League and was proven as a fairly decent goal scorer? You know, could Cornet play through the middle? Or do they think, do you guys think that they just need to go out and sign somebody that is just an absolute penalty box merchant?
Hamill, you go for it, man.
Okay. I mean, Trossard sort of played as a second striker for most of the season. Did pop up in a few unorthodox positions, but they play with that 3-5-2, and it means they don't necessarily need one super prolific forward. Like if your front line is getting 16 to 20 goals, which it did, as we've just established, as Brighton, you're probably securing a middling finish, and that is what success looks like for them at this point. Danny Welbeck chipped in with a very useful amount of goal involvements. They have signed Dennis Undav. Not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly, from USG from the Belgian top flight. He was prolific there this season, 25 goals. Of course, USG got promoted the season before last, right? So he's not. There's not an awful lot of pedigree there in the Belgian top flight, but he still went supernova. I mean, he is perhaps going to be their point man. Maybe their poacher to an extent. Maybe he will play instead of Mopé, and Trossard will continue in that supporting role. And if he gets 10 to 13 goals, again, that'll be a success story. But Neal Mopé, I don't know, he's much maligned by Brighton fans, and he did underperform against his XG this season for the first, not for the first time. He does it consistently, to be honest, but he should be like a 10 to 12 to 13 goal striker in the Premier League. So I think he's fine to have in your squad. Good depth there. Some other options that have crossed my mind. Iheanacho, if you can get him out of Leicester, like he can either play as a 9 or in that supporting role, can't he? So his versatility, I think, would be appealing to Potter. I don't know why Brendan Rodgers doesn't give him more minutes. He definitely deserves them. They could try something slightly more ambitious. Daniel Marlin's not set the world on fire at Borussia Dortmund this campaign. They've brought in Adeyemi. There's chat of them buying a few more players. Like they're having a big old turnover after Marco Rosa's departure, aren't they? So that might be an option. I'm thinking of Noni Madueke as well at PSV. Rumours of him going to Tottenham have cooled somewhat, haven't they? And Leicester as well. Emmanuel Dennis going down from the Premier League with Watford. Is he worth keeping around? Can they get him for 15 mil? Would that be sound value? Yes, in my opinion. And there's some other interesting options on the continent, like Mohamed Bayo from Clermont Foot, who, a little bit like Undav, has only had one really, really good season in a top flight league, or the top flight, full stop, sorry. But yeah, Brighton, they operate in a difficult sort of area, don't they, where they have to take educated gambles. It's not quite worked for them the last few attempts, but like Jahan Bash, etc. But it's a difficult task.
It is a very difficult task. And you mentioned Jahan Bash there, and I worry whether they think they've been burnt a little bit with that, because I do think, I really liked the fit of Eddie Nketiah to Brighton. I think he's probably going to have signed that new contract.
He's getting 100k a week at Arsenal, isn't he?
Yeah, he's going to sign that contract at Arsenal. But if that hadn't have happened, and let's say he hadn't have had that, because I do believe if he hadn't have had that sort of 5-game burst where he scored plenty of goals and got lots of game time, he probably would have left this summer. And if he had have left, then I do think that would have been a really interesting pickup. So I think there's some offshoots to be had from the top teams. Armando Broja at Chelsea, let's say that Chelsea don't want to sell him this summer and they want another loan deal. I think it's a much more sort of approachable loan option than going back to Southampton, because I think Brighton are a much more upwardly mobile side than Ralph Hasenhüttl's boys. So I think there are options to be had off the offcuts. Liam Delap, an exceptional finisher from Manchester City, who's clearly going to be needing a move this summer. He's not going to get game time with Julian Alvarez and Erling Haaland coming in, yet again scoring goals for fun at youth team level, and has proven when he comes into the first team he can score goals, scored in the Champions League as well. I think there are offshoots to be had from the top teams on loan potentially to play 50% of the minutes alongside Neal Maupay that I think they might be.
The guessable player that Duke has mentioned before might be someone like Minamino. I like a few of the names you've mentioned just there, but someone that's going to press, someone that has the technical capability to join in with that quick ball circulation that has become a hallmark of Potter. Like everyone's got to be on it on the ball, haven't they? Maybe he's a little bit more in the Trossard role than they'd like. So maybe they do want just an out-and-out finisher, but I can see him prosper in there and not costing an awful lot. What was it, 10 goals in all competitions in roughly 800 minutes for him this season? Like, Minamino deserves a little bit more than just to rot on the bench once more. So I
wasn't great at Southampton on loan though. Like, he was okay, wasn't he? But like, I don't remember him sort of watching a lot of him at Southampton and thinking like, this guy is a goal scorer.
Got another name to throw into the mix. I think it is important to note that this is quite a crucial area to sort. I know we've talked about it for years at Brighton, but prior to that end of season run where they were phenomenal in that final 10 games, I think they beat Man United, Spurs and Arsenal in that run. You know, they were not playing particularly well in the middle part of the season. They do really struggle to break down teams that are more naturally defensive. So I think signing another number 9 is definitely the way to go this summer and has been talked about for so long. We'll see what Undav can bring to the table. But I think Steven Bergwijn is out the door at Spurs potentially. And I actually think he's actually a very good player, I think. I think it hasn't really worked out at Spurs, clearly. But his record at PSV suggested that he is the right profile of player for a side like Brighton. He's also really versatile. He can play through the middle, can play on either wing as well. He's got a nice bit of pace about him for the counter-attack as well. And he has had some great moments for Spurs. I mean, particularly those 2 goals against Leicester in that 3-2 victory, which now looks crucial to the fact that Spurs managed to get a 4th place as well. And I don't think he's part of Conte's plans. Could they get someone like Lucas Moura as well? Not sure whether he'll be part of Conte's plans, with Kulusevski having made that right wing slot his own, sorry. So I think those are 2 potential options for Brighton to have a look at as well. But I think that the best one is Chris Hamill's earlier suggestion of Iheanacho, just given his tactical flexibility and the fact he was so good the year before last and then didn't really get a look in under Rodgers this year. And Patson Daka and Vardy were sort of dominating the sort of minutes as a number 9, despite the fact, you know, he'd shown that he can play as a 10 or as a 9 as well the year before. I think it was 12 goals and 5 assists he got as well. So Iheanacho had been on my number 1, and then maybe someone like Steven Bergwijn.
Ooh, it's an interesting one. Battling Ajax. Champions League Ajax for Stevie Bergwijn. It's not going to be easy. Let's move on to the next side. Suggestion from Canva, who's an Arsenal fan. And he says, signing Morata. Obviously, Arsenal looking for strikers this summer, probably more than one. Gabby Jesus looking increasingly likely to join the club, which I think is just a fabulous signing, given his, expected goal numbers continue to be extremely solid, even when he's not playing an awful lot of games. Whereas the second name on the list, we've seen the likes of Dominic Calvert-Lewin. Clearly, they're looking for a slightly more physical option, I would say, up front. Gabriel Jesus comes in as potentially the number 9, but can also operate wide. He can operate off a striker. I think they do want, the guy, that's going to be there through the middle, secondary option for them. And is that Morata? I'm massively unconvinced by this one. What do you think, Hamster?
I think he's unfairly bemoaned by English fans, to be perfectly honest. I think people caught wind or sniffed out that it was maybe a little bit vulnerable, prone to overthinking, maybe didn't have the thickest skin when he first came to England, and I just think he was bullied in the press. His numbers have always been very good. This is a guy that he spent the last 5 years at 3 different clubs, but he averaged 0.66 goals and assists with Chelsea over 18 months, 0.54 with Atletico, and this was not, it was a good Atletico. It wasn't vintage. They finished 2nd and 3rd. He finished 5th at Chelsea, by the way, in his first full season, or Chelsea finished 5th. And 0.77 with Juventus, who finished 3rd and 4th. I think his overall forward play, deserves a little more respect. Super mobile, yes, has the occasional clangor, which does not look good circulating on Twitter, but more than makes up for that with a lot of his good work. I mean, he wants to stay at Juventus. Juventus don't want to pay the £30 million to make it permanent from Atletico. Like a lot of clubs, they're sort of trying to renegotiate loan terms. They're perhaps seeing, Coutinho go to Aston Villa for 20 after originally agreeing, 17, wasn't it? After originally agreeing to 34 and thought, we should probably be conducting ourselves like that. Part of me still thinks he'll end up at Juventus, or he's holding out for that at the very least. Apparently doesn't want to return to English shores, and that doesn't surprise me. But the fact that Arsenal are keen on him, I don't think it'd be the worst signing. I really don't. At a good price, at a good wage, Like, he is a good support act for an already very productive forward line. Like, if you're looking for a ruthless 15 to 20 goal striker, he's not it. Maybe this is like a souped up version of the Brighton situation we were just discussing. If Gabriel Jesus gets 10 to 13 goals, if Morata gets 10 to 13 goals, like he historically has done, then they don't need to be shopping around for Darwin Nunez at 100 mil. I just think sometimes fans need to look at the bigger picture rather than like the big name signing. But there we go. They've also been linked with this guy on the free, which I found quite interesting because they've already got about 3 versions of him in the team. But never mind.
You've swung me a little bit there with Morata, especially as a support act. I don't think it's horrendous, but the fee's got to be correct. And also, I worry about his reception amongst Arsenal fans. Like, I think that Arsenal fans can be quite bitey brutal straight away, can't they? They can be very brutal.
And I think he's the sort of player that would weigh on.
Yeah, and I don't particularly think Alexandre Lacazette's had a bad season. Like, he's been okay. It feels like anytime you speak to an Arsenal fan, he is getting absolutely destroyed. So I dread to think, Morata first game goes through, misses a one-on-one. I think he probably doesn't ever recover from that one incident amongst Arsenal fans. Like, it's that sort of thing, isn't it? And I don't blame him at all for not wanting to come back to the Premier League because of that. For me, not too sure about that one. While we're talking strikers, let's move on because we are going to have to smash through some of these next few rumours. Aaron says, unpopular opinion, but selling Lukaku so early instead of building around him. Dukester, would you build around Lukaku if you were Thomas Tuchel?
I don't know. It's a tricky one, isn't it? It clearly hasn't worked out. Could it work out? I think it probably could in a certain system, but it's so far off working out in the moment that it's just a really bit of an embarrassing scenario. And I don't really like the talk about his agent going back to Milan this week to talk with Inter. Like, if you want to duck out of this, Romelu, after a year of, you've not been at full fitness at times, you've complained about it publicly in the media, like, I think you've kind of thrown the towel in a bit early, to be honest. I do think some of this is on Thomas Tuchel, to be honest. I don't think that he's necessarily made it easy for Romelu Lukaku at times, but there's 2 sides to every story as well. And I think it is probably the time for Chelsea to change formation, which is my big thinking, which could obviously help Romelu Lukaku. I think he has played his best football in recent years with another number 9 alongside him who he can feed off and run that right-hand channel that he does so effectively. But I just feel like with Christensen leaving, with Rudiger leaving, with Alonso possibly leaving, that's their backup left wing-back gone as well, with Azpilicueta potentially leaving, with Ousmane Dembele potentially coming in, I don't really see the point in playing 5 at the back anymore. The only worry with that is if their centre-back duo next year is going to be Thiago Silva and Jules Koundé. Like, Thiago Silva's been phenomenal this year, but I think a lot of his lack of pace has been sort of covered up by the fact he plays in a 3. And Jules Koundé, we're not quite sure how he's going to be able to deal with the sort of physicality of the Premier League, which I kind of hate as a cliched phrase, but he is only 5'10". I think it will be an adaptation. He'll be coming in with massive shoes to fill, with Christensen having departed, and particularly Antonio Rudiger, who is so crucial to that 5 at the back system. And I don't think Chelsea are going to be able to concede. Their attack's not good enough at the moment to make up enough ground on Man City and Liverpool without their defence getting considerably better. And last year, their defence wasn't nearly good enough to challenge for the title, and they didn't score nearly enough goals. So I think he does need to change something. And at points last year, we saw him switch to a version of 4-2-2-2 or 4-2-3-1, and it did work for some of his attacking players as well. I think Timo Werner works much better alongside another striker as well. Some of his link up with Kai Havertz for Germany has been really promising. Hakim Ziyech works much better in a wide 2 system, in that 2 behind the 2 strikers as well. The only issue is quite where Mason Mount necessarily fits in. Are Kante and Jorginho good enough or fit enough right now to work in a double pivot in a 4 on the back system? There are some question marks over Chelsea, but I just don't think their squad next year is really improved by selling Lukaku this window, because as we've already discussed with Darwin Nunez and numerous other strikers, there aren't really that many top strikers available this summer at the right age bracket, at the right price bracket. So I'd keep hold of Lukaku this summer and try and make it work, because they kind of have to.
Yeah, I just don't think Inter Milan are going to be able to afford him back. How does that deal work? £100 million last summer. What fee do they pay this summer to get him back? Is it like a loan with an obligation? It's just too complicated to work, in my opinion. I think Thomas Tuchel is definitely stuck with him. I'm not sure about building the team around him, though.
Classic
I'm really
Serie A accounting. They'll sell Bastoni for 45, and then they'll loan Lukaku for 2 years with an obligation to buy, to pay 50 million euros at the end of it.
I'm extremely unconvinced
2
about
loan
building a
fees
team
before.
around Ronaldo.
Yeah, no, I think your
well,
instincts are probably correct.
Let's fly through some of these then, because we've got a lot to get through. Maybe we'll just do like quick fire answers. This one from the Cage, who is a Tottenham fan, and he says Spurs possibly getting Perisic at 33 to be first choice left wing back in the Prem over a player like Kostic. What do we think about this? He's coming in £180,000 a week, isn't a 2-year contract. Obviously, this is extremely Conte-esque move, given that he's worked with him before. He likes the experience, doesn't he? And clearly doesn't fancy Sergi Reguilon at all at this stage. So I would expect Sergi Reguilon to leave the club, to be honest with you, this summer. What do we think about a player like Perisic coming in? I don't really think that's a mistake. If Conte wants Perisic, I fully back him to get Perisic.
Yeah, we're going to sit here as sort of stats nerds who have been conditioned by the collective Football Daily way of thinking over the last 2-3 years and go, listen, don't make a 33-year-old your third top paid player. 180k is an awful lot. You should be trying to make the squad younger. You should be giving more minutes to Ryan Sessegnon, who showed some promise towards the end of the season. Like, don't curtail his development if you see something in him. But then Conte will get him and play him, and he'll do really well and will look stupid. So, yeah, just let Conte do what he wants.
Absolutely, and it's clear that Tottenham's wing-backs aren't good enough right now, and he's got proven track record of working with Perisic. I think he put up 14 goal involvements last season as well, Perisic, didn't he? And his underlying numbers, yet again, in comparison to wing-backs across Europe, are still pretty solid, even at 33. Just because you're 33 doesn't mean you're a write-off. Like, I think this is a fine move, and if Conte wants him, then just give Conte whatever he wants.
I think Kostic would have been... Kostic is an interesting player. I would have preferred Kostic over Perisic in this situation as well. But I think probably Perisic is a little bit more well-rounded. I think it's fair to say like a lot of Kostic's good work is done in the middle or the final third. Like he's in the top 1% for an awful lot of attacking metrics for his position. But then... yeah, Perisic maybe brings that nous, that pedigree that he doesn't have, that we know that Conte just doubles down on character, doesn't he? He's got a track record, sounding out these characters, so fair play.
Yeah, Kostic is going to cost a lot of money as well. So Perisic just makes perfect sense. He was the second best left-sided defender in Serie A last year after Teo Hernandez. I actually really like it as a move.
Yeah, KRG, who's a Man City fan, says selling Sterling. Now, obviously, we've seen over the night, we're shooting this very early, midweek, that Raheem Sterling is being linked heavily with a move to Real Madrid by the Madrid press. Obviously, they missed out on Kylian Mbappe. They need a player that can play on the right, potentially, of a front three. I love a front three of Vinicius, Benzema and Sterling. Like, even in, he's not quite hit the heights of 2017 to 2019 Raheem Sterling, but last season was still putting up 0.7 goals and assists per 90 for Manchester City. I think he would shred La Liga, Raheem Sterling. I think he would be so good out there. I love this move with 1 year left on his contract if they can get him for the right fee.
Yeah, I mean, it's sensational from Real Madrid's perspective, but I think it would be a massive, massive error from Man City's. I'd rather sell... most of their front line over Sterling, to be honest. I'd rather sell Mahrez by a distance. I'd rather get rid of Grealish than sell Sterling, to be honest.
Really?
I think Sterling is a sensational player that is so adept at this Pep system. I think there has been a bit of an issue, maybe a little bit of a breakdown in trust between manager and player, because his performance suggests that he should be getting more minutes than he has over the last 2 seasons. But he is a difference maker. He takes on, he beats his man. Mahrez can be a little bit predictable at times. And we saw in that final game of the season against Aston Villa just what a sort of difference he can make from the bench. So, yeah, I think selling Sterling would be a massive, massive error. Just as you've sorted out your attack, bringing in Alvarez, bringing in Erling Haaland, do not lose one of your best attacking wingers. This would be a huge error from Man City.
Yeah, like he's still in the top 1% non-penalty expected goals, progressive passes received, like top 20% of dribbles, like progressive carries. Like he's such hot player still, man. He just doesn't necessarily get the game time at Manchester City because of the nature of the squad and the way Pep Guardiola rotates. Like, I think he'd be great. What do you think, Chris?
Yeah, only 23 league starts last season, which is his lowest return since joining the club in 2015-16. And we know that that's something that he's not happy about. But to his great credit, like Raheem Sterling is always very professional about his grievances off the pitch. You very, very rarely hear about them in the press. I think like Pep maybe resisted last year turning over the squad. That's probably acting against his instincts. I think there is probably a temptation, having listened to some of the Athletic reporters who have a view of Manchester City behind the scenes. I think there is going to be a little bit of an overhaul this summer to maybe just refresh the squad, refresh personnel. A lot of them have become very well versed in his methodology. Maybe have become a little bit fatigued with it. That'd only be natural, wouldn't it? After 6-7 years of service, we're seeing Gundogan put in the same bracket as Raheem Sterling when it comes to potentially being sold. Gabriel Jesus, etc. So I could see the appeal of both sides, really, for freshening things up. And he would be a big upgrade on Asensio, who, I've slagged off for a lack of production in the past, but he did actually put up 10 goals this season, which is his best return in La Liga. But I still think easily upgradable. I think it'd be a detriment to City's squad strength, but I would quite like to see it happen, yeah.
Yeah, so would I. We'll do some quick fire ones here. So I'm gonna read out a fan suggestion. I just want you to say mistake or not a mistake.
Nice.
You can have a small window of like explanation if you want it, but let's do some real quick fire ones because we've got some great suggestions I want to get through. Jeb says not signing 2 backup fullbacks at Arsenal. He's an Arsenal fan. They have obviously already got Nuno Tavares and Cedric as backups, but do you think they need to sign another 2 backup fullbacks? Do you think it would be a mistake or not a mistake to miss out on that opportunity, Chris?
I think it would be a mistake, but it's clearly something they have at the forefront of their mind. Looks like that Aaron Hickey move is going to take place, right, for £21 million, which is a big old fee for someone with sort of league average numbers in every metric. But you do have to take into context, he's very young. So great raw ingredients there. I think they're already doing it, aren't they? Linked with Calvin Ramsey as well from Aberdeen. Just got a fetish for Scottish fullbacks, but it would be a mistake. I don't think it's a mistake they're going to make.
Yeah, Dukes?
Definite mistake. Hickey's an interesting one, linked with Calvin Ramsey, but supposedly, as Chris points out, they're linked with Calvin Ramsey, but Liverpool are supposedly leading the race, and if you're going to go choose between Liverpool and Arsenal, you definitely choose Liverpool right now. So yeah, I'd definitely sign, particularly replacing Cedric Suarez, I think should be a priority this summer.
Okay, next one we've got from a Newcastle fan who says not signing Matty Target on a permanent. Obviously, he's been there on loan, hasn't he? And it looks like they're not going to take up the option. Instead, they're going to be moving potentially for Lodi at Atletico. What do we think? Mistake or not a mistake to miss out on Matty Target?
I think it's a mistake, to be honest. I don't really know what's going on with Matty Target because Luca Digne came into Villa in January and they almost instantly loaned out Matty Target. And I thought he did pretty well at Newcastle, to be honest. I thought he was pretty consistent and made a massive difference. So it seems like a sensible move. Linked with Renan Lodi, as you said, who's supposedly going to cost about £40 million. Renan Lodi's an excellent player, particularly in a 4 at the back system, but struggled when Simeone's slightly adapted that in the last few years. But £40 million seems like a slight waste of money when you've got Matt Target sitting right there.
I actually disagree with Dukes. I think that Newcastle need to resist the temptation there to be like, oh, Matt Target did really well for us, given we're in a relegation battle. Like, let's bring him in almost as a thank you for his service. Like, it was a good loan move. It was a good loan move for both parties. It doesn't mean he can't be upgraded just because he did, really, really well. If Newcastle want to be a little bit more forward-looking, if they want to push themselves up the table, if they have those European title aspirations, I think they do need a more, attack-minded or a fullback who is more capable in attack than Matt Target, who historically has never put up goals, assists, something that is a prerequisite if you want to finish in those Europa League conference places. I would not be paying £40 million for Lodi. He's only started, around 20-25 games in the league in the last 2 seasons combined. So I think that's very cheeky of Atletico to ask for that amount of money, even though he is contracted till 2025. But if they can get him for 20-25 mil, tasty. Very tasty.
Oof. I would just sign Matt Target. I think the attacking output from Kieran Trippier kind of covers the fullback areas. I quite like to have a little bit of a disbalance there. But let's do the next one, and it is Cam Reader, who's a West Ham fan, and he says, buying a striker to challenge Antonio rather than replace him, Dukes.
Yeah, definitely need to do it. I mean, Yarmolenko's left the club. It's probably left them a little bit short in the Premier League run-in. They probably missed out on Europa League football because they didn't have a viable alternative to Antonio, who went on quite a long sort of scoring drought prior to scoring in, was it the last game or the penultimate game? So yeah, they definitely need to sign a striker this summer. Chris mentioned Scamacca earlier, but I think he's quite heavily linked with Inter Milan right now as a eventual replacement for Edin Dzeko. So yeah, we'll see who they manage to bring in, but they should definitely be looking for a striker this summer.
Chris?
Yeah, I think there's a couple tasty options at Rennes. Gaetan Laborde, Martin Terrier. Like, these are players that can play along that front line, not out-and-out strikers, which I think stylistically suits West Ham. That's where they've been really excellent with the sort of rotation of that front four in the last campaign and a half. I mean, I feel sorry for them. They've gone in for Nunez, they've gone in for David. They've not got either. I think they were the right sort of targets as well, and they sounded them out early. But yeah, I think one of those guys at Rennes who have been in hot goal scoring form this season.
Let's do the next one then. Leeds fan HB Huv says, not signing two half-decent CMs, a striker and fullbacks, which seems like an awful lot of like chat there. But I mean, they've signed one already, haven't they? Brendan Harrison's come through the door. I think that personally, that's quite a big old wish list. I think it would be a mistake not adding extra cover, but to ask for two central midfielders, a striker, and multiple fullbacks, I think is quite a stretch for a team that are going to have a limited budget. Although selling Rafinha might help that, although then you've got to replace him as well.
Yeah, it's difficult. I suppose what's going to happen with Phillips as well. I mean, they could potentially have quite a big transfer kitty, but lose their two best players, which is a little bit worrying. But I think they slightly paid the price for not really investing that heavily last summer. I think Dan James and Junior Firpo were their only real arrivals, and they were sort of banking on the fact their squad that had come up from the Championship and the signings they'd made in that first summer, the likes of Rodrigo, etc., would sort of keep them going. But with a few injuries and loss of form from key players, they really struggled. So I'm kind of with Pure Swazista that they do need to sign quite a few players this summer.
Yeah. Next one is a Chelsea fan, again, controversial, but probably signing Ousmane Dembele. He says, I like him and think he can be good, but I'm afraid we will give him wage. It'll be too big considering his injury record. Chris, mistake or not a mistake to sign Dembele?
I think this taps into what Dougie was talking about earlier. Like, what sort of system is Tuchel going to go with this season? And then, like, what personnel is he going to stick with as well? Because it feels like only Kai Havertz is really assured of a starting berth at Chelsea at this point in that forward line, which is ridiculous considering all the players they've got. So I would sympathise with a Chelsea fan that says, listen, why are we signing another winger if, you know, without deciding the future of Ziyech, Pulisic, Werner, like, etc. I mean, Ruben Loftus-Cheek, I almost said then, but yeah. Yeah. I don't know. Not a great answer for me, to be perfectly honest, but there we go.
Dukes?
Ousmane Dembele, I think, is a great player, but I'm not sure he fits that 3-4-3 system. I think he finished the season so strongly at Barcelona. They've gone on a bit of a U-turn on him. I think he ended up with the most La Liga assists with 13. And his assist per 90 ratio had only been topped twice in Europe's top 5 leagues in the last 10 years. So he really did end the season in fantastic form, but he's missed 100 games with injury during his time at Barcelona. I would be a little bit sceptical, but as a free transfer, there's not too much risk. I'd probably do it.
Wages.
To be honest.
Yeah, I think Dembele's being slept on a free transfer. I think he'd be a great signing for a lot of clubs, but the injury record and the supposed attitude problems that the Spanish media have reported in the past worry me.
Well, you know what? If you're PSG and you can get rid of, obviously we've heard rumours that they're trying to get rid of Neymar. They've got rid of Angel Di Maria. Like, if you get those two players off your wage bill and bring in Ousmane Dembele, who's going to cover some of that output, then that feels like a sensible move to me, rather than being Chelsea and being like, listen, this freebie's there. Like, we've not got any buyers for our other attacking talent, but maybe they'll come in. Like, let's just add another one to the roster. But
Yeah, while we're on the topic of Chelsea, we may as well round these ones off because Sam Tabateu and Leon. Sam says not keeping hold of Gallagher, and Leon says not keeping hold of Billy Gilmore. So, mistake or not mistake for either of those, Dukes?
With Kante and Jorginho's contract situation, I think they both expire in 2023. It would be an error to sell them, but I think Billy Gilmore in particular needs another loan. And Conor Gallagher, I'm not sure he, again, fits Tuchel's current system. I think his best position would probably be competing with Mount for a roll off the striker because his passing and his pass retention numbers just aren't very impressive. So, yeah, I'm not sure whether Conor Gallagher is going to become a Chelsea regular, to be honest. I think he's going to be a very, very high-level Premier League player, but I don't see him becoming a Chelsea Kante Jorginho replacement in the long term.
Yeah, I totally agree. Let's do a personal question then before we wrap up. This one was sent in by Pink Greg, who says, how are you going to spend your weekends now the regular season is over, hamster?
I have spent the last couple of weekends watching an awful lot of TV, so catching up on that. I'm gonna go to Paris as well with my girlfriend. I'm gonna take her to Paris. Yeah, just maybe get out of the house, mate. Summer in London is absolutely superb, one of the best cities in the world, so I won't be short of options. Yeah. What about you, Per?
Probably festivals, raves. Usually that's what I'll do to kind of keep myself busy during this time. Dukes?
Well, I'm going to be looking for a new house, actually. I'm living at my girlfriend's family's house at the moment. So, yeah, I'm going to have to be doing a lot of house viewings, which is probably not that exciting in 30-degree heat in sweltering London. But no, it should be good. So I'll be doing a lot of house viewings and then, usual stuff. Drinks by the river.
It doesn't really...
Yes,
we're still going to be producing daily content, aren't we? And finding ways to talk about football.
Changes.
So not an awful lot changes for us. Maybe it gives us a little bit of time to experiment with some new formats. We, of course, want to make Team Talk a little bit more regular. We are trying to line up some more interviews for EFL Wonder Kids. You guys seem to really like the Fabio Carvalho interview. We are trying to blow up a little bit more on TikTok, as well as sustain the success these guys have had on Snapchat. So just stuff like that, really.
Love it. Boys, is there anything you want to point to before we wrap this up? I have a suggestion of going and watching We Need to Talk. It's with Tottenham Hotspur special. What about you two boys? What have you got coming out?
Why don't you go check out Friday's Continental Club? We had Bundesliga expert Jasmine Babaron talking about Sadio Mane to Bayern, Lewandowski to Barcelona, and Dortmund's new signings, plus much, much more. So go check that out.
Sweet, yeah.
Christopher?
Go either one of those two. We Need to Talk's been popping off recently, mate. Go and if you've not watched our
follow us on TikTok as well. Follow us on TikTok because that's
of...
where Christopher Hamill is all over.
If you've not watched our Joe does our season predictions review on We Need to Talk, go and watch that because it was genuinely funny.
It's absolutely disastrous. But we'll go all the way again, won't we, in about 2 months' time when we make the same ridiculous predictions. That's it for another episode of Sunday Vibes. If you enjoyed it, make sure you hit the like button, hit subscribe. Thanks very much for watching, everybody. We'll see you later. Bye.